I wake up early. The park is peaceful before crowds show up. It's just me, my dog Buddy, and the occasional jogger. This routine helped me for the past 3 years, since losing my job and starting to freelance from home. Buddy came when I needed him most. After the layoffs, I fell into a dark place. My apartment became my prison. I barely left except for necessities. My sister convinced me to visit the animal shelter. That's where I met Buddy, a golden retriever mix with gentle eyes. His previous owners abandoned him when they moved. When our eyes met, I knew he was coming home with me. Buddy became my reason to get out of bed. We have our routine. Wake at 6 a.m., breakfast, then our walk through Oakwood Park. Buddy loves his blue bowl with little stars. It's worn out, but he won't play with anything else. That morning was like any other. The sun was coming up, grass still wet with dew. Buddy was trotting beside me, ball in his mouth, when I spotted a woman struggling with her dog near the pond. She stood out, not just because few people were around, but because of how she looked. She had a bob haircut that looked cut with kitchen scissors and sunglasses from the early 2000s. But what caught my attention was her dog. The poor thing was a scruffy terrier that looked unfed for weeks. Its ribs showed through its dull coat, and it pulled at its leash, trying to escape. I couldn't walk by. I approached, keeping Buddy close. I asked her if everything was okay with her dog, noting it seemed distressed. The woman scowled, asking what business it was of mine and telling me to mind my own business. I apologized for intruding, but mentioned her dog seemed hungry and upset. I offered dog treats. She dismissed my offer, saying she didn't need charity and her dog was fine. Her eyes fixed on Buddy's blue ball. Her expression changed from annoyed to interested. She commented it was a nice toy and said Eden would love something like that. I figured Eden was her dog's name. Buddy held his ball tighter. I thanked her for the compliment and explained it was Buddy's favorite toy from puppyhood. She told me her Eden deserved nice things too and demanded the ball. Her directness caught me off guard. I refused, explaining this was Buddy's special toy and he was attached to it. I suggested a pet store nearby that sold similar toys. The woman's face hardened. She called me selfish, saying my dog had the toy for ages while Eden needed something to cheer her up. I couldn't take away Buddy's favorite toy. I offered to help find something else for Eden. She wasn't listening. She lunged forward and tried to grab the bowl from Buddy's mouth. Buddy jerked back. The woman's hand got scratched by his teeth. It wasn't a bite, just an accidental scratch as he protected his toy, but the woman acted attacked. She yelled my dog had bitten her and showed her hand. There was a small scratch, barely breaking skin. I apologized for the scratch but explained she shouldn't have tried to take his toy. He was protecting what was his. She threatened to sue me and have Buddy put down. As she yelled, her own dog cowered. That's when I took out my phone. I told her I was calling police because I worried about how she treated her dog. She protested. I explained I was concerned for Eden's welfare since the dog was undernourished and afraid, which was animal neglect and a crime. She tried to leave. I followed at a distance, staying on the phone with police. I described the situation and our location. She kept yelling threats, but I stayed calm while making sure she didn't leave with the dog. In 15 minutes, a police car arrived. 2 officers approached. I explained what happened, the dog's condition, my offer to help, and the woman trying to take Buddy's toy. The officer asked for her ID, which she gave reluctantly. When asked when her dog last saw a vet, she refused to answer, instead mentioning my dog attacked her. The officers looked at the scratch on her hand, then at her dog. One examined Eden closely. The dog trembled. The officer said animal control needed to check her dog as its condition was concerning. The woman got angry, calling everyone names. Her outburst confirmed the officer's suspicions. Animal control arrived 20 minutes later and examined Eden in the park. They said the dog was undernourished and showed neglect signs. They needed to take it into custody. The woman was arrested for animal cruelty and disturbing peace. As they took her to the police car, she screamed about suing everyone. I stayed to give my statement and check on Eden. The animal control officer was gentle with the dog. They said they'd have a vet check Eden and ensure proper care. They asked if I would witness if the case went to court. I agreed. 3 months later, I testified at her trial. She was found guilty of animal neglect and got a fine and community service. She can't own pets for 5 years. I visited Eden at the shelter regularly. She gained weight and became more confident. A month after the trial, Eden was adopted by a retired couple with time to give her love and patience. Sometimes Buddy and I see them at the park, Eden running freely, her coat shiny. She has her own blue ball now. Buddy doesn't mind sharing the park with her. I didn't set out to be anyone's hero that morning. I was just someone who couldn't ignore an animal in need. That day taught me speaking up is sometimes the only right thing, even when uncomfortable. Some might think it wasn't my place, but if our positions were reversed, I'd want someone to speak up for Buddy too. Working in public service for elected officials over the years has connected me with people at various levels of government, city council members, county commissioners, state representatives, you name it. These connections were something I appreciated professionally, but I never thought they'd become important in my personal life until recently. My wife and I have lived in our rental community for about 5 years. When we first moved in, the place was well maintained with responsive management and reasonable rent increases. The staff knew residents by name. Repairs happened promptly, and the common areas were kept clean. It was exactly what you'd want in a rental community, but around 2 or 3 years ago, everything changed. Our community was purchased by a prominent real estate mogul, someone whose family name appears on buildings across the city. Almost immediately we noticed changes, and none for the better. The maintenance office reduced its hours from being open daily to just 3 days a week. Repair requests that used to be handled within 48 hours now took weeks. The landscaping crew that used to come weekly now appeared maybe once a month. The pool closed 2 hours earlier each day to save on staffing costs. Even the cleaning service for common areas was reduced. My wife and I tolerated it for a while. We both worked demanding jobs, and the thought of packing up our entire apartment and moving seemed overwhelming. But after a particularly frustrating incident involving a leaking ceiling that took 3 weeks to address, we decided enough was enough. We gave our notice and started looking for a new place. About a week after we announced our plans to move, I was chatting with a couple who lived 3 doors down from us. They'd been in the community for 7 years, longer than us. My neighbor asked where we were moving to. I told them about the place we found 15 minutes away, mentioning it had better amenities and wasn't much more expensive than what our current place wanted for renewal. The other neighbor then asked how much our renewal was increasing. When I mentioned it was only going up about $100 a month, they seemed shocked. They told me their rent was being increased by $300. This caught my attention. A $300 increase seemed excessive, especially since I knew they had excellent credit scores and stable incomes. I asked if maybe it was because their unit was larger than ours. They explained that our floor plans were identical, and they'd actually been there longer than us. When I suggested negotiating, they said they had tried but management wouldn't budge, claiming it was market rate for their unit. As we continued talking, I mentioned that our other neighbor, a black family who had lived here for 4 years, had moved out suddenly last month. My neighbor revealed that this family had told them why they left. Management wanted to raise their rent by $700 a month. When I expressed shock at such a large increase, they said management had given the same market rate explanation. Something clicked in my brain. I started mentally cataloging the neighbors I knew had recently moved out or complained about rent increases. Within minutes, a disturbing pattern emerged. I asked about another family in Unit 312 and their rent situation. My neighbor confirmed that this family, who was also black, mentioned their rent was increasing around $350, and they were considering moving too. I went home that night and made a spreadsheet. I messaged every neighbor I had contact information for and asked about their rent increases. Within 24 hours, I had data from 12 different units. The pattern was undeniable. White residents, $75 to $150 increases. Black residents, $300 to $700 increases for identical units. Not only that, but black residents reported significantly longer wait times for repairs. One family had been waiting 3 months for a broken dishwasher to be replaced. while my own dishwasher had been fixed within a week when it broke down. I felt sick. This wasn't just bad business, it was discrimination, plain and simple, and it was happening right under my nose. The next morning, I made some calls. I called the state senator's office and identified myself to the receptionist, mentioning my previous work for Representative Smith back in 2018. I explained that I needed to speak with the senator about a housing discrimination issue. 3 days and 7 phone calls later, I had spoken with the state senator who chairs the Committee on Landlord-Tenant Issues, both the chair and vice chair's chiefs of staff, 2 county officials who oversee housing regulations, and an assistant attorney general who specializes in housing discrimination cases. I shared my spreadsheet along with screenshots of maintenance requests showing the disparity in response times. I also mentioned that this company had already settled a lawsuit for predatory practices in another county. A week passed. Then I received a call from the state senator herself. The senator told me that they had initiated a formal investigation into the rental company. She explained that the Attorney General's office was involved in requesting records of all rent increases and maintenance requests from the past 3 years. 2 days later, something strange happened. The entire management team at our rental office was replaced. The new manager sent out a community-wide email announcing improved maintenance response times and standardized rent increase policies. Most interestingly, any resident who had received a renewal notice in the past 60 days was invited to come discuss revised terms. My neighbors with a $300 increase, their new increase was $85. The family that had moved out due to the $700 increase, they received a personal call from the new manager offering them their old unit back at their previous rate, plus a reasonable $100 increase. As for the real estate mogul who owned the place, last I heard, his company was facing investigations in 3 counties, a class action lawsuit and potential violations of the Fair Housing Act. My wife and I still moved out, but I sleep better knowing that my former neighbors won't be exploited anymore, and that sometimes knowing the right people can help right a wrong. I didn't expect to be a single dad at 32, but here we are. 5 years ago, I met someone who seemed perfect. She was beautiful, charming, and checked all my boxes. I didn't know that behind her smile was someone who couldn't take responsibility for anything. We met at a friend's birthday party. I liked her confidence and how she got attention in any room. After dating for a year, we got married in a small ceremony. Everything looked good, and 2 years later we had a son. That's when things changed. Or maybe that's when I noticed the problems that were there all along. The coffee table incident opened my eyes. Our son, who just started walking, bumped his head while she was watching him. I rushed home from work after her call. When I got home, I asked what happened and if our son was okay. She blamed the coffee table, saying it was too low with sharp corners. She said she told me we needed a different one. I reminded her that she picked this table because it matched the decor. She blamed whoever designed the table for making furniture with corners when people have children. Our son was fine, a small bump, but her reaction stuck with me. She never said she should have watched him better or turned away for a second. This happened with everything. When she burned dinner, it was the oven's fault. When she was late, it was bad traffic lights. When she forgot bills, the mail came late. One morning, I found our son crying in his high chair, breakfast untouched. I asked how long he had been there. She said she was doing her makeup and he was fine. She added that the babysitter should have been there 20 minutes ago. When I said the babysitter called yesterday about being an hour late, she complained that the sitter should have reminded her again, asking how she could remember everything. The babysitter quit after being blamed for lost toys and carpet stains. The cleaning lady left next, then 3 nannies in 6 months. Then she started blaming me more. She said I worked too much and that's why our son wasn't talking enough. When I said I worked normal hours and read to him every night, she said I wasn't reading the right books. She mentioned her friend's daughter who spoke in full sentences at the same age. The breaking point came when she maxed out our credit cards on expensive clothes. I told her we couldn't afford this and we had a budget. She said if I made more money, it wouldn't be a problem. She claimed that since items were on sale, she was saving money. When I suggested returning some things, she refused. She asked if I wanted her to look bad at the preschool committee. After that fight, I knew something had to change. I couldn't live with someone who never took responsibility. I didn't want our son thinking this was normal. I suggested counseling. She refused. She said she didn't need someone telling her what was wrong with her life and nothing was wrong with her. She said if I had marriage problems, that was my issue. After months of thinking, I filed for divorce. When I gave her the papers, she reacted as expected. She blamed me completely, saying I never appreciated her and would regret this. When I said I wanted what was best for our son, she accused me of using him as an excuse and called me selfish. The divorce was hard. She came to court in expensive outfits, like it was a fashion show instead of a custody battle. In court, she said she was a perfect mother and anyone would confirm it. But the three nannies, babysitter, and cleaning lady all told about her behavior. The judge gave me primary custody, with her getting visits every other weekend. She also had to pay child support, which she always complained about. She said the judge was biased and the payments were robbery. It's been 2 years since our divorce. Our son is now 4 and doing well. He's confident, kind, and responsible for his age. I'm dating again, taking it slow with someone who understands accountability. My ex-wife lost her job for blaming a project failure on her assistant. She lives with her parents now, who enable her behavior like when she was growing up. She still visits in designer clothes, complaining about how unfair the world is to her. I often look at old photos and wonder how I missed the signs. But when my son brings me a drawing or story, I know something good came from those hard years. I picked the wrong partner, but I'm being the parent my son needs, teaching him that making mistakes happens, but owning them helps you grow. I got involved in what some might call revenge during high school back in the early 1980s. When you deal with an administrator who thinks rules only apply to everyone else, sometimes you get creative. Let me explain how I ended up fertilizing our principal's lawn. I was a decent student, not particularly popular but well liked enough. I joined a few clubs and kept my head down. My parents taught me to respect authority, which I did until our principal showed he didn't deserve it. This man was entitled. He treated the school like his kingdom, enforcing rules when it suited him and ignoring them when it didn't. The final straw came when he tried to take money. We spent months fundraising for senior prom to buy new jackets for the football team. He just announced it as if it was his decision alone. The booster club, which had several wealthy parents, stepped in and stopped that. But we knew what kind of person we were dealing with. A group of us talked after school about how frustrating it was. I told them I was sick of him acting like he owned the place. One friend mentioned how the principal canceled the debate team's trip to regionals, saying funding was needed elsewhere. Another friend pointed out that the baseball team got new uniforms the next week. Someone else said the principal needed to be taught a lesson. That's when I had an idea. My dad worked in landscaping and I knew about fertilizers. I knew Epsom salts make grass grow faster and greener. I told the group we could leave the principal a message he couldn't erase. The plan was simple. I prepared an old water-type fire extinguisher by cleaning it, adding about 2 pounds of Epsom salts, then filling it with water before pressurizing it. It was a targeted fertilizer sprayer. I gave it to 2 friends on the track team who could run away quickly if needed. The next night they went to the principal's house and wrote messages on his front lawn. One wrote, TYRANT in big letters. Another added anatomical drawings typical of high school boys. Nothing destructive, just fertilizer in specific patterns. Within 3 days, the results showed. The grass where they sprayed grew faster and turned deeper green than the surrounding lawn. The messages stood out clearly to anyone passing his house. The principal was livid. He came to school the next day angry. He told everyone someone had vandalized his property and when he found who did it, they would be expelled and face criminal charges. He called the police to investigate for malicious mischief. But legally, malicious mischief meant destruction of property. Someone had improved his lawn, even if only in patterns. The officer laughed when he saw it. He told the principal he couldn't arrest someone for making grass greener. The principal protested, showing what had been written and saying it was harassment. The officer said there was nothing legally anyone could be charged with and suggested he get his whole lawn fertilized to match. He paid a landscaping company to fertilize his entire lawn to hide the messages. Must have cost him a lot. This led to another prank a few weeks later. A friend took sugar packets and sprinkled them on top of the gas cap of the principal's car, leaving some visible on the ground. Then they wiped the cap clean so it would look like someone poured sugar into his gas tank, a way to destroy an engine. When the principal saw it next morning, he immediately thought the worst. He complained that someone put sugar in his gas tank and called it criminal damage. He had his car towed to a mechanic who dropped the gas tank, flushed the fuel system, and replaced filters, all for sugar that never entered the tank. The repair cost several $100s. Later, a friend asked if I saw the principal's face when he told the janitor about his car. I said it was funny and maybe next time he would think twice before taking money from student activities. Another friend mentioned the principal still didn't know who did the pranks. The principal never found out who was behind either prank. He became more paranoid, constantly checking his car and property. But he also became less tyrannical at school. Maybe he realized his actions had results, even if not how he expected. We never did anything that caused actual damage. We just wanted him to know his entitled behavior wouldn't go unchallenged, even if we had to make our point through fertilizer and sugar packets. Those were different times. Today, schools have cameras everywhere, and pranks would probably be caught on doorbell cameras. But back then, in a small town in the early 1980s, high schoolers could still teach an entitled principal he wasn't above everyone else.